welcome everybody to today's Be More Uncommon talk. Just in case you're new to Uncommon, although I see a lot of lovely familiar names, can't see faces, but we have make a lovely kind of safe space for neurodivergent tweens and teens to make friends, collaborate, and explore creativity and grow in confidence. Our mission is to help kids with autism, ADHD, PDA, and more to find somewhere that they feel they belong and feel safe, basically. We run lots of clubs, courses, and camps, as well as host these talks that you find yourself out right now. So I'm Mivy, I have ADHD. I host these talks, I host a couple of other gaming sessions, and then also the occasional video camp or club. And just in case, these talks, the Be More Uncommon talks, are designed basically to show off some role models that are also neurodivergent, because I feel like we all need to see other people who might be managing the same things that we are, have been there, done that in other ways as well, and just learn from each other, because I think that's very important to just share the knowledge, basically. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Brian. I go by he, him pronouns. I also hail from Canada. I wanted it to sound like a mysterious kingdom there. I don't know if it did. But I recently graduated from UCL with a master's degree in neuroscience, and I currently work at Uncommon as a gaming facilitator. So I run some of the Minecraft camps, D&D, and Anime Club. All of my favorite things in the world. And as some people know, everyone who works at Uncommon is neurodivergent, and so am I. So I have ADHD, and I was diagnosed, I think, like 5, 6 years ago. It's been a little bit.
It has been a little bit. Yeah, it's really cool to be able to speak to you. Like I said, I interviewed like Elliot when he first joined, and also Ollie in Japan at the moment. So it's really nice just to be able to, I guess, learn more about yourself, and then for the people watching as well to learn more about one of their facilitators. So I think it'd be good to just basically get right into it. We always kind of look back and then go forward. Looking back, you say that you were late diagnosed. What was it like growing up, kind of before you knew you were neurodivergent, like looking back, like with hindsight?
Got in trouble a lot. I was I think I did good in places where um I had to be quiet. For example, like school or um let me see, lineups or maybe student church with my family a lot. So I was really good at staying quiet when I had to, because I was scared of getting in trouble. But outside of that, I was constantly told I was too loud, I talked too much, I talked too fast, um, and yeah, caused a lot of issues with my cousins my age and teachers and family sometimes, where sometimes if I wasn't trying really hard to mask, I would just get in trouble.
Yeah, I think that that's so difficult because you don't realize that you're masking, and so it's just like a way of life. I found myself like always masking at school, and then as soon as I got home, I'd be getting in trouble quite a lot because I was like exhausted. I think very overstimulated as well. Yeah, it was really tricky. So what were some things that you kind of not only enjoyed doing, but something that you also felt like you were really good at, again, kind of using hindsight?
Also, okay, I just wanted to talk about overstimulation a little bit first, though, because
Yeah,
that
sure.
just you just reminded me, because I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned recently about myself is, especially with ADHD, always thought I was understimulated, but I do get overstimulated quite a bit. And I think it was one of those things that when I was younger, I didn't realize that that could be an issue. Um, so now that I know about this, sometimes when I go in public, I'm better at knowing when I need to take a break or need to step away from a noise because it's really overwhelming or it's too hard to deal with. When I was younger, I would just I would lash out sometimes in certain places when I didn't want to be somewhere, and I didn't realize that this was something that was affecting me. So that was cool to learn about. Um, but you said you asked what things I was good at, right? Or
Yeah, sure. I
um,
can also speak a bit about overstimulation as well, because that's something that yeah, I've definitely started to learn about myself is noise. Or like I guess specific types of noise kind of overlapping quite a lot, really. Like I don't know, it really makes everything feel more overwhelming. And so I think I sometimes have to like either take a step back or try and, like I've heard people use headphones quite a lot when they're going to quite busy places, especially like the tube and stuff. So yeah, learning ways to help you basically. All right, and we have a question that's relevant to that already. Brian, how did you learn about like how you're affected by being overstimulated? Like what was like what's an instance of that? And then yeah, what overstimulates you?
uh, how did I learn about it? I think I think it was pretty recently. I think especially moving to London from Canada, I think being in the city, it's a lot more noisy all the time in certain places. And so, for example, I think um, I it's really weird because I really like noises. For example, if I'm at home and I have a window open, I like to hear cars moving by. So if it's a white noise kind of thing, that's fine. But when it's really busy public areas, I think that was when I started learning a lot more about what overstimulated me because I would shut down pretty often and get really tired or just disengage a lot of times when there's either too many conversations or too many people around. I think it becomes overwhelming really quickly and everything kind of just feels like it's too much, I guess. Uh, and I guess so just being in varying degrees of very busy places in London, I think was the main thing. What do I do if I get overstimulated? Um, uh, so I always have headphones. I really like my headphones a lot. I think it helps me calm down a lot. So putting on headphones, putting on music, or just yes, trusty, no never headphones agreed. Or just trying to exit the area. This is the thing I like about London quite a bit. I think a lot of other cities, it's really hard to try to peel away from a crowded area. Um, so in London, if it's too busy, you can walk a few meters and turn off onto a more secluded street and just take a breather. Wow, just take a breath to calm down, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's what we've started trying to do a lot more in like sessions as well because like we said we're neurodivergent, so there have been a lot of times where I become like overstimulated or like one of the other facilitators have been, and that's why sometimes we do like the a very quick muting break because it really helps like everybody. Like if we notice that we're overstimulated, surely like other people might as well. um and I mean, they might also be overstimulated, but you can probably tell when I'm overstimulated. So I think, yeah, it's definitely something that I've also very recently started becoming more aware of about myself. Especially living in the countryside and then going to somewhere like London, I'm like, ah! Yeah, cool. Yeah, so back to our question. I love going off-roading. What were some things you enjoyed doing growing up, and like what stuff were you good at?
What's, I mean, gaming was always one of those things, I think. Uh, yeah, I always really enjoyed gaming. I think that was one of the first things that I was going to say. raised on. A lot of my aunties and uncles played, so we spent a lot of time together doing that, and I got pretty good at video games. And I really enjoyed them. Uh, yeah, I think in that aspect, I think if I really liked something, I would dedicate a lot of time to it. And so I would just dedicate myself, dedicate time, and um, spend many hours just getting better at things, learning how to do things better, um, just trying to get good at things. So yeah, it helped a lot
Yeah,
in
like
school,
a
I guess.
determination, I guess. Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, no, that's perfect. Thank you. I need to find those words, but yes, determination. Um, and other things I think with ADHD in school, I think if I really did pay attention, I could be, yes, the hyperfocus. Thank you. If I really did want to learn something, I could lock in, as some would say, and I'd be good, able to remember it. Like I had a pretty good memory, so especially in school, all my multiple choice tests, sorry, all my tests were multiple choice, especially in grade school. And so if I paid attention to class, I could memorize things, and I did pretty well on those tests because it's a lot of recognition. And so that was pretty helpful in terms of learning.
It is wild to me that all your tests were multiple choice because I have such vivid memories of so many like essays and like writing until you're, like you have like an hour and a half or whatever, and you're like, I have to write like about all of these things, and like you have that dent in your finger as well. So that's really cool. I don't know if I'd prefer either or. I'm sure would prefer to have multiple choice because that I think I could definitely revise for a lot more. But yeah, it's just wild to me. Cool. I'll come back to the questions that I'm already seeing in the chat. We'll leave them for later. But so you were only diagnosed what, like 5, 6 years ago, you said?
Yeah.
What prompted you to seek a diagnosis?
So I wasn't feeling like myself at the time, and I was having issues getting myself to start doing applications for stuff after my undergraduate degree. So I was seeing a therapist at the time too, and she recommended that I look into ADHD. It was a really funny conversation because I was telling her about something. She was just like, "Have you ever thought about ADHD?" And I think at that point I was pretty baffled because I did well in school, and that very big thing that stops people from getting diagnosed, um, and then leads to have to struggle later on in life because of schools. There's a lot more direction, so I found it a lot harder outside of school, just be confused and figuring out what to do next, that kind of thing. Um, yes, she asked me that question. It's like, what are you talking about? And went home, did some more research, talked to friends that have ADHD who've known me since I was young, and yeah, after many conversations, just reviewing things and seeing how what I thought and what I know about ADHD lines up with what friends have seen or family have seen, and went ahead with the diagnosis and got that figured out.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky. I mean, just in general, but there's like a lot of stereotypes about, like both autism, ADHD, and everything in that kind of umbrella. So I think for me, that's what also stopped me from looking into getting a diagnosis until like I kept on seeing like specific things that weren't as common in some of my more neurotypical friends, and yeah, it was with the help of some of my like one of my friends that have ADHD that I like spoke to a couple of times, and she was like, you should probably look into that, but without that, without like somebody kind of pointing it out, it would have just been like a struggle with not understanding who I was, I guess. Um, Going off that, how did getting this diagnosis shape how you now see your like past experiences and then also how you see yourself now?
I think it, in general, just explained a lot to me. Because when you asked the first question about what was it like growing up neurodivergent, I think those things in hindsight became how do I say it? So I kind of saw them in the view of ADHD. And from there, I was like, oh, those things make a lot of sense now. And it wasn't just things that I could label as bad or good. It was like, okay, I was this outburst happened or that outburst happened because of not knowing about ADHD and like how it could affect me. Um, so it was just really nice to understand things of why I was struggling or why I did this and this. I think, especially as I went through my GCSEs, my A levels, and it's my undergrad, there was a lot of exploring uh, my mind and like what I thought about, like the way I thought about things and certain patterns I had. And I would get pretty frustrated at myself for not being able to do certain things. Uh, but I kind of became more able to accept myself and the way I thought about certain things. Now, if something's happening, I'm struggling or I'm frustrated about something, or I'm like, why can't I just do this? Like that's the baseline question that we ask ourselves a lot of times. Looking at it from the lens of ADHD, I think it becomes more of less of I just need to do this and okay, I know it's because of ADHD, so how can I structure certain things or strategies in order to coax myself, I guess, towards a direction of where I would want to go. So in general, just being more forgiving for myself, not just kind of hitting myself on the head. Stick.
Yeah, I really like that answer. I feel like so often I've been trying to like what do you call it when you're like forcing, I guess forcing myself to do things a certain way, or like brute forcing my way into different tasks and things when, you know, like maybe I either needed to take a break because I'd been forcing myself to work for like so much amount of time, or like I hadn't eaten properly that day because I'd been hyper focused on something else, and then my brain is like, please feed me. So yeah, there's definitely a nice way of yeah, just being kinder to yourself, I think, is one of the more important things. Um, one of the big things that I wanted to speak to you about was like your education and how you kind of approached all of that. Could you give us a little overview of like your schooling? Like, what did you study for like GCSEs, A levels, and then uni?
Yeah. So for my A levels, it's a little different because I'm from Canada, so the structures are not exactly the same. There isn't such a distinct separation between certain programs of study. So I had a lot more choice of what I could do. So I did uh, biology, physics, and chemistry, all to the highest level that you could do that in GCSE and A levels, in math, calculus, and then everyone has to do English, sort of like language arts studies and like social studies. Um, yeah, and then so that at university though, during my undergrad, I did a degree in biology. So more specifically though, anything that's not related to humans. So plants, animals, and the environment. And I also had a minor in psychology too.
That is very, very interesting. I feel like mine are so boring now. I can't even remember what most of mine were, but I really like that you could basically like expand on what you actually really cared about in those subjects rather than doing very like surface level things until you get to uni. So you've mentioned that you did really well at school. And I'm sure that this is quite a relatable story to a lot of people because I definitely struggled in the background, but was like a high achiever in kind of the foreground, you know, like pleasure to have in class, blah, 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 blah. Um, Especially post GCSEs, what was it kind of like, you know, in terms of revision? Um, and yeah, how did you approach those kind of like uh tests and stuff?
Yeah, basically asked in my GCSEs A levels, right? Um, so when I did those. I didn't actually. So the GCSEs and stuff, what we have in Canada, they're called, I think, PATs. So it's like provincial assessment tests, I think. So I think those are pretty similar to the GCSEs. So those were everyone had to do them kind of thing, and it was all across kind of this state or province I was in, whichever one is more easier for you to understand. Uh, like, yeah, so the general area. And those I did fun, but I never actually studied for them that much. I think I was confident enough to be doing the work, but everything felt very last minute. And I think I never did things on time. And so it would always be the night before struggles or the day before. And I think it was just a lot of pressure to do well, but also I had to just cram. So every single test, every single assignment was just crazy. And I think it got a lot harder when school just didn't wasn't easy anymore. When I couldn't just go to class and do tests and then do well somehow a lot of the times. So for example, I had to do advanced placement exams, or it's pretty similar to IB or International Baccalaureate, if anybody knows, over here. And so they didn't count for any of my grades, but I really wanted to do well with them. But because of the way I mean, because I just never learned how to study, I pretty much failed all of them. Luckily, they didn't matter, but then going into my undergrad, uh, yeah, it was really hard to do well, and especially in essays, just not knowing how to study. I think I couldn't just do well anymore by the class, and started struggling a lot more in school after that.
Yeah, it's really tough and definitely something that I experienced as well. While we were speaking last time, I mentioned how during my dissertation, like my final, sorry, my nose is so itchy. Yeah, my final dissertation for my master's degree, it was only then that I realized like, hey, if you break down some of these bits, it becomes a lot easier rather than like trying to write everything at once, which seems so obvious at the time like looking back, but yeah, it's definitely finding ways that make things kind of like make more sense in your head, I guess. Um so how I know that you mentioned that you got diagnosed and then you went on to do your master's degree. How has your learning style like changed? What's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you?
So I think it was kind of weird because I think I developed a really good system for myself at the end of my undergrad, and then kind of had to rediscover it um, through a different lens altogether with ADHD there. I think this is weird to say, but I like trusted myself a lot less with remembering to do things. I think before I would just kind of be like, oh, I'll remember that, and then just not do something important. Um, so now I think one of the main things that I do is try to keep notepads on me most of the time and try to be a little more meticulous, I think, at spending time to write things out or lay them out in a way that makes sense to me. I think that's the important thing. But one of the main things I just usually have a notebook on me or a notepad. And then if I write something down, going through it and trying to just like, okay, do this today, or just I have multiple different ways to kind of organize to-do lists, if that makes sense. So I use a Notion, which I really liked. Um, one of the other people at Uncommon helped me find Notion. And I think that uh, she kind of showed me how useful it was. And so I'll have a notepad that's just for when I'm out and about. I need to write things down. But for example, I have a Notion with a to-do list where I just really like Notion because it looks nice. But also the way you can organize and separate things is very useful. And one of the things I like to do is having different to-do lists for different aspects of my life. And so when I was in school, I had like a school to-do list and a life to-do list, or just general chores and such. Or yeah, so there's a lot of things that you can just do to break up the things that you have to do in your life. And having the piece of like a notepad, obviously it's one of those things that's really overwhelming. I know a lot of people with ADHD just have a bunch of notebooks that are empty because you're trying to force yourself to do things I that it's kind of hard to figure out or to stick to kind of thing. And so I kind of like the notepad because it's easy to just write things down, and then I would organize it after. And if I don't want to organize it, then I won't organize it. It's just there, and I'll be able to look through it. Um, but it's just nice having something that has everything for me personally.
Yeah, yeah, Notion I really enjoy because you can basically mostly tailor it to suit your needs rather than, trying to brute force a program to like work for you. So I definitely recommend it as well. One thing that I'm curious on is, when you think about like while you were studying neuroscience, that is such a I hear, like for every subject you have to learn like a lot of stuff, but I feel like the sciences, you have to learn so many like complicated words and like processes and stuff. How did you go about kind of learning those or like revising for that?
So I really like flashcards. I know some people don't like them, uh, but so I really like an app called Anki. And so I was applying for medical school in Canada for a little bit. And one of the things you have to do is called the MCAT. It's a really big test with lots of things to memorize. Um, I didn't really use it that much in my master's because my master's was more of a research master's. So I didn't actually do a lot of tests for class and stuff. It was a lot more writing for me. But when I was studying for that test, there's a great way for your brain to learn, I guess is the best way. There's something called the forgetting curve, where the days that it takes for you to forget things, I don't exactly remember the correct numbers or anything, but there's a certain number of days where you start to forget things. It's like it kind of falls off really fast, so you'll forget things really quickly after a certain amount of time. And so the program is based on that, and it will bring things up as you need to remember it again, which is really nice. And so I think it makes it easy to revise things too, because the program keeps itself working, I guess, where once you put flashcards in, they are inserted in the order that I guess the code requires, and it's really easy to upkeep because you just have to do your flashcards every day. And for example, let's say that you go to class and then you go home, you don't have to, like, you still have to upload it onto Anki, but it's a nice little, you don't have to revise every day because it does it for you. And so if you put something in that you need to memorize, you put it as a flashcard and it updates automatically. And yeah, it's just a little thing you do it every day. And I think that if it makes it nice and small, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming of, oh, I have all this stuff that I have to do today. It's like, okay, there's just 50 flashcards maybe, but I don't have to sit down and feel so overwhelmed start reading a textbook, because I know that sometimes when I was studying, I just open the textbook and just be like, there's too many things. I'm so behind already. How can I catch up? And then it becomes super overwhelming, and then you just don't want to read the textbook anymore.
How
But
do
yeah,
you
I really like
spell that app?
flashcards.
Because it sounds really good.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. I
Uh,
thought it was an O. Okay, cool. Yeah, that
no,
sounds
but a
really
lot
useful.
of medical students in Canada and the US use it for the MCAT. So I found it really useful.
Yeah, no, that's a big top tip. So we have Notion and we have Anki. Um, cool. So going to, I guess, like a different part of the school experience. What was school like for you socially? When we spoke before, we mentioned masking and then also, finding it tricky to make connections with people.
Yeah, so in school, I think I always had a lot of energy, uh, so I could just talk a lot. Um, and that made it easy to meet people and talk to them. But I struggled to feel connected. So I think the best way I would describe it is I had a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of friends. And I always felt like I was a little different. There was some kind of barrier between me and other people. Uh, I felt like our minds would work differently sometimes, and I couldn't understand how to ask the right questions, or how some people got so close to each other. I think that was one of the things where I was just like, how did they get so close? I'm curious. I wish I could get to that point. And so yeah, I did felt pretty isolated at lots of points in school, and I felt pretty lonely.
Yeah, I think again that's a very like relatable thing because I mentioned before that there have been so many times where I like I'm in a group of like three and two people get very close and they start having a deep talk and I'm on the outside and I'm like, how did they manage to do that and how can I be in that? And it's such a weird way of thinking when, like surely I can just walk up and also do that, but sometimes it's tricky to do so. So, how has your approach kind of changed with making friends? Because like knowing you now, and like seeing how you interact with some of like the kids and then also like our fellow facilitators, like I know that you went to somebody's birthday party and like were a big hit with everybody. So how do you go about making friends and also connections?
Um, I think one of my partner always makes fun of me for labeling things as cool and uncool, but um, I think one of my main tips is just not being afraid of being uncool, I guess, or sticking to hobbies. I find that, especially nowadays, I'll stick to the hobbies that I really like, and I think sometimes those may not help you fit in, and it does feel kind of lonely when people don't share the same interests or judge you for who you are just because you like certain things. But I think it's really helpful to stick with those things because when you're in school, you have to go to see these people, and it's hard. Um, but I think if you stick with the things that you like, you'll eventually find people who have the same interests, and it might feel so impossible sometimes, but I think that when you stick to those things, you'll somehow you'll you want to meet those types of people, and I think those are the connections that will naturally become a lot closer, and you'll feel a lot closer too, just because you're able to understand each other a lot more. And so, if you feel lonely and it's hard to meet other people, but there's always some things I think, and you get lucky to find those. And if it isn't in your school, maybe it'll be in some random after school program you have to join, or we'll just meet someone who says, maybe we should try this, or you go to a random club or an after school event and you meet people somehow. But I think if you stick to the things you like, you'll be able to find groups that you'll feel connected to. And yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we try to do uncommon too. It's creating environments where people can just meet each other. I think you become closer a lot more naturally than you'd think sometimes, because you know how you're talking about you're the third person in the group and you don't know how to get close or join into that conversation. But maybe it's confusing because it was just hard to get to that spot in the first place. And maybe if you meet some people who are more similar or more interested, it becomes a lot more naturally.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I have two related questions for sure. One of them is a very interesting question, and I think we can both answer this, which is, did you ever mask to make friends? And slash, I guess, do you still mask to make friends sometimes?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I yeah. I think it's something that's hard to. It's something that you have to balance, I guess.
Mm,
Because you know I did say all of these things about sticking to what you believe in, but there's also situations I think where you kind of just have to get along with certain people, or you have to force yourself into to mask a little bit. I think, and those I think are hard to avoid. But I think this is where finding people you enjoy being with, or finding things that you like, is really helpful because sometimes I do feel like I mask, and I think sometimes you have to, but being able to go back to a safe space that you've created for yourself and kind of replenish, where you can take that mask off, let yourself cool down, kind of thing.
yeah,
It's really
definitely.
important. Yeah.
I agree with that. I think with some of it you have to decide whether you want this person to be your friend. And so if you are masking, and it depends on like how much you're masking, like I could be completely different to myself. Maybe, or I could be masking like just a little bit because maybe I'm not feeling as energetic as I might be that day, or maybe I'm in a environment where I have to like quickly get my personality across a bit more than like it actually is, type thing. So then afterwards, or like even during, you think like, do I actually want this person to be my friend? I can't keep this level of energy up all the time. So, like then slowly kind of like feed them some of your like more kind of self, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Masking
Yeah.
is such a weird thing because it sounds like such an almighty like hail the mask. But yeah, I think it's very tricky, and there has to definitely be a balance. And sometimes you just mask to kind of like get by in like a social situation where you're meeting new people. But if there's somebody that you actually want to be friends with, like think about how sustainable it is for you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um
on that topic too, I think, especially with making friends, I think one of the things I've noticed sometimes is that, where this kind of goes along the same lines, where you the main thing I think is just spending time with people. Sometimes you might not do the task exactly, or like the exact activity that you exactly want to do, but it's really useful to, I think, sometimes you might not want to do it, but maybe just going along and seeing how it goes. And again, always striking that balance between masking and saying how you feel and that kind of thing. But it's really useful to, I think, spend time and do things with people that, especially if you really want to be their friend, it's like, spend a little time doing something you don't like this time, but maybe next time suggest it. But I find that a lot of times I've gotten close by just spending time with people and hanging around and just showing up, I guess, consistently and being there.
Yeah, yeah. Just I also like one of my top tips for like low energy friendships, I guess, is I guess they call it pebbling, where I just like send my friends some memes, and it's just kind of like And I do this for people that I don't super like, I'm not best friends with yet, or I want to be friends with them. After like speaking to them a few times, I start like sending them like a meme that I think is slightly like they might like, and that's me
Yeah,
like slowly like dipping my toes in the water of friendship. And it helps, I think, for sure. One another question that's kind of relevant to this, and I may start speeding this up a bit, but because we have so many things that I want to ask. But when did you become interested in Dungeons and Dragons, and how has it helped you?
I love D&D is so helpful. I think um, I became interested in it very in like primary school, grade school. I think it was such a cool thing. I always liked medieval stuff like fantasy and dragons and all that. Um, and I had a friend that was running those with another group of like friends of a friend. Yeah, and they invited me. And I think one of the main things is improvisation, and I think learning how to not be yourself sometimes, that makes sense. Putting yourself in other people's shoes in a really weird and wacky way sometimes where you're playing a character with such a different personality than you. But I think you learn a lot how other people would think or how people would react to things in a more playful way. Um, and I would say, like fun role playing sometimes, where you can just explore different personalities and people very different to yourself, and it's still fun. It's one of those fun things where you kind of just doing something wacky. Um, I think for me personally, on a more like talking to other people note, um, yeah, I can just kind of talk about random stuff now because sometimes in D&D you're just trying to talk to the shopkeeper because you need a discount on the gold on the products or something, and then you maybe are a little more funny when you wouldn't be so in real life. Um, so yeah, it just teaches you to be a little different than you would usually be, and in a very safe and like, fun environment.
Yeah, I see also one question that we can both quickly answer. What would you recommend for people who want to start getting into D&D? And to that I say, wink, wink, Uncommon has a couple of D&D clubs going on throughout the week. And then in the summer, we also have Kids on Brooms, which I think is kind of a softer way to get into D&D. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
much about it,
It's
but
just not
yeah.
as intense in terms of character creation and stuff. It's a lot. You just kind of follow a list and then you do things. It's not as much looking into pages of like character descriptions and stuff. Just one sheet and you roll your dice and figure it out. And if if you're not in uncommon, um, I think looking up groups around you
Mm.
or just online groups too is always really helpful. And otherwise, you can just look into like reading the player handbook or Dungeon Master's Guide, just the Bibles, I guess, of D&D, the main things people would look at.
There's also a lot of podcasts and also like Critical Role and like different
Yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons YouTube series and stuff like that, which shows other people playing. And it's kind of like watching a TV show slash podcast, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
So those are also very useful as well to kind of see how other people do it.
But
Um,
just with Critical Role also, it is a little adultish sometimes, so make sure you do watch Ask a Parent before you watch Critical Role.
yes, I'm so sorry. I will find kid-friendly
Yeah,
recommendations for the future.
the actual play podcasts help a lot, and just sitting and listening to them, it's great.
Yes, it's very fun. Okay, to neuroscience. What made you want to study neuroscience?
I think I was always interested in the way people think, which is really funny because now that I say that, having being neurodivergent and being curious about how people think was kind of another way to understand people better. I'm trying to understand like, oh, what works, what doesn't work, like, how do I interact with people? Um, that wasn't my concern most of the time, but it's really funny that I think about that. But it was more so just, yeah, I just always find it fascinating why we think our certain ways or how our brain creates the world around us, things like that. Um, yeah, the brain was really cool, so I was always just interested in it. And that's also why I did the kind of the minor in psychology too. It's cool to think about why we think, how we think, what makes it work.
Yeah, I feel like this is also a tale as old as time for a lot of neurodivergent people that I've spoken to, including myself. I wanted to study psychology until I went into film, because I just wanted to know how my brain worked, and I was interested in other people's. Saying that, what is your favorite, I guess, part of the brain? Or okay, sorry, pause for a second. For kids or anybody who's watching who doesn't know what studying neuroscience is, could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what do you do? What's it about, etc.?
Yeah, studying neuroscience. Well, like any scientific field, I think you're reading papers and you're trying to understand your topic of study through reading what other people have done and then making your own ideas and then the scientific process of hypothesize, observe, try to make methods and stuff to understand your observations and hypotheses, and you go down that process over and over again. And every time you read a paper, you're kind of like updating your ideas. But more specifically for neuroscience, I think it's uh, playing with cool brain machines and coding is the way I would describe it. And so it's a lot of there's a lot of different technologies that we have. There's MRI machines, just huge magnets. Some people might have seen it sometimes if you went to the hospital. Um, those huge machines that you can see into your brain. There's also EEG, which is electroencephalography. Encephalogram? Can't language right now, but kind of reads electrical signals and in your brain. And so a lot of coding, I say, is because you are having to analyze a lot of this data. Because the brain is really complicated. There's a lot of neurons. There's a lot of things going on. Um, it's like trillions, billions of neurons, which is kind of like the basic unit of the brain, I guess you could say. And yeah, so it's a lot of data. So we use computers to analyze it. So we use some cool brain machines to collect brain data, and then we analyze it using coding of computers.
That's very cool and very interesting. All I can kind of pictures, those like bald caps or whatever they are with
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
thingies. What has been like what's your either your favorite part of the brain or what has been one of your favorite things that you've kind of like studied? Like what interests you most, I guess?
So personally, I really like emotions. I think that was one of the main topics I studied during my master's. I think it's changing a lot more nowadays in term because I finished my master's. So um, I'm trying to find what to do next, and yeah, I've been getting a lot of more interested in just random things related to the brain. So I did my degree was more specifically cognitive neuroscience, and so that's more higher level functions, one could say. So learning, emotions, navigating your daily life kind of thing, like thoughts, planning, language. And so a lot of that goes to the frontal lobe, to the front part of your brain. And so that's one of my favorite parts. This is so complicated and so interesting about how these things communicate. And fun fact, that's one of the things that makes us human, I guess you could say, is our frontal lobes are really developed. So everything that's kind of like here in the middle of your head, it's kind of like the lizard brain, sometimes people call it. And so a lot of other animals have that. And that's just for like survival. So breathing, heartbeat, that kind of thing. But the frontal lobe, yeah, lots of reasoning and stuff. And deciding what to do with lunch, for example.
That's so interesting. I really love hearing about how the brain works because it's such a mystery sometimes. So what do you hope to do with neuroscience? What do you hope to do with neuroscience? What do you hope to do now that you've graduated?
Yeah, I'm still figuring that out. And I think it's okay in general. But maybe some kind of research assistant positions. I still would like to work in academia or in healthcare in general. I think, especially working for Uncommon has really made me want to work with neurodivergent people, help them. And yeah, so just kind of healthcare data. healthcare science, analyzing healthcare data, those kinds of things, or just researching them. Yeah, all those things.
Uh, cool. I don't know how to segue into this, but we're going to go into your interests. And there's also 10 minutes left. So if anybody else has any other questions to ask Brian, please go ahead. But yes, I don't know how to segue into this, but basically you mentioned that you're interested in stand-up comedy. So I would love to hear more about that. And I'm sure a lot of the people that you facilitate for would also love to hear it.
Oh yeah. I did. It's funny because the only reason I did stand up was because it's in class, and one of my teachers brought in a comedian, and we for some reason host a neuroscience comedy night, and I was asked to perform for that. Also, we would answer questions all along, so if you have questions, don't worry. Uh, but yeah, I really got into stand-up comedy for doing that. I think um, humor is one of those things that's always really interesting. And one of those things where you're like, oh, how do I be funny so I can make more friends? Because I definitely did that. Yeah, I think it's really interesting and fun. I think it taught me how to write better for myself if I am doing like a presentation for a class or something, where I will, when writing a script, I'll add pauses or intonations with just the text, like the way I format the text. So for example, if I want something to be capitalized, if it's capitalized or bolded or highlighted, I'll change the way I talk to slow it down or speed it up or be loud or be quiet. And stand up is it's one of those really random things that I do.
I find that so fun. I've always wanted to get into improv a bit, and I feel like so many of the hobbies that we do kind of bleed into that. Like D&D is like a bit of improv, like stand-up comedy obviously is a bit of improv. Um so that's very fun. How do you approach hobby finding, especially with somebody somebody with ADHD? Because I have like a graveyard of hobbies that I've tried and will one day hopefully get back to. But yeah, I have many tools, including a
Yeah,
glass engraver for some reason.
no, me too. All my parents' house is full of random knickknacks. Um, I mean, it's funny you say that, bouncing off the comedy thing too, because the comedy is it's one of those things that's still there, but it's sliding into the graveyard, I guess. Which is fine. I think, becoming interested in new things and exploring things is great. And I think it's really important to say yes to things that you might not know if you like or not. Because a lot of the hobbies I've found I really, really enjoy have been from me just going with friends to classes or something where I'm like, I don't know if I like this. But because you asked me, sure. And then we go and I find out I really like this thing. And it becomes one of the things that really stick for me. For example, I started climbing in London when I got here, and I never stopped and really like it. Um, yeah, and there's a question I think is really interesting here that relates to that too, because I also get really into hobbies and you start really learning, hyper focusing and just being like diving so deep into something. Um, and do you ever find that learning more about something makes it less interesting or magic, or is it the reverse? Is the question. And I think it's actually the reverse. I think that it's a balance you have to be careful of you do have to take a break sometimes because I do think that that happens where if you get too into it and it starts making you anxious or consuming you too much, where you're not doing the things that you should be doing, then I think it becomes less interesting then. But I find that it's the reverse because I don't think you ever stop learning about something. For me, I just want to be good at something. So if I start doing if I start doing a hobby, I can't just accept that I'm good here. I'll always get more into it, and I find that there's so many small differences that you could do to change the way you go about something. Uh, that there's always more to learn. Or, for example, during Minecraft, I don't know about you maybe, but I'm always learning about something new every session. Because somebody will be like, oh, if you press this button, then you can do this thing. And it's a really cool shortcut. But there's always little things that you can always find out, and there's always more to learn, I think.
Yeah, the only hobby that I've decided I will probably never learn is I really like magic, like practical magic, and I love actually being like semi-tricked by it. You know, sometimes I can see what they're doing, or I love being able to try and figure out how it's being done, but I don't want to personally learn because I want to still be wowed by it. And that's my one thing that I won't ever try and do. But yeah, I also love being able to figure things out and try different things, especially with friends. I find that's always like a nice way of like bonding you to somebody, and then
Yeah.
it's nice to have a hobby with somebody as well. Cool. We have like 5-ish minutes left. Depending how we go, we might go like a couple of minutes over. But one other question that I think is relevant to this is and I just accidentally deleted it while I was about to. Oh no, you answered it. Okay. Um, to say it out loud,
Yeah.
what games have you put the most time into, and what are your favorite genres?
So I really like strategy games. I think one of the most on Steam I have is Stardew Valley. I really like Stardew. I played Minecraft a lot when I was younger. I think I played this game called League of Legends. I played for a while too. I stopped playing that, but now like more like somewhat strategy games like wrote like this thing called auto chess, where it's kind of like a chessboard and you play different uh where you play different minions, I guess, kind of like chess pieces and they upgrade and yeah. Uh those games. Some so like more chill games nowadays too. Or just strategy games where I can just sit back. But roguelikes too, I think I really like.
Yeah, I've been
Uh
enjoying seeing you
roguelikes.
pop up on my Steam with Stardew Valley every now and then. It's
Yeah.
addictive. I really love it. It's one of my favorites. Um, cool. We have like 3 minutes left. Let's see. What's the final question I can ask? Um, I'll ask two final questions, so that might take us a tiny bit over. So one of the things that I think is would be interesting for some people to know, and you've already touched on it, you are from Canada, you are now in the UK. What is how was that move for you, and like what's your one of your favorite things about the UK, I guess?
Uh, so the one of the main reasons I moved was I just really wanted to see new things and experience different cultures. And it's really close to Europe. So traveling to Europe and seeing the rest of kind of the world is a lot easier than being in North America because it's so secluded. Um, but let me see. In the UK specifically, I really actually really like pub food. I think pub food hits really hard over here. Um, yeah, like pies, bangers and mash, beans on toast. I really like beans on toast. I really like beans. I think I've discovered that beans are one of those things where I'm like, yeah.
Beans are delicious. What do you put anything else with your beans on toast, or is it just like butter, beans on toast,
Oh
toast?
man, I haven't gone that far yet.
Cheese. A little bit of grated cheese, delicious.
Oh, that's worth a
Um,
try.
I'm so sorry, we've gone off topic. I'm kind of hungry. Um, Finally, to wrap it up before I start dreaming of beans on toast, for somebody who academically is kind of like on the same path of you as you, and again, I also struggled as well. Somebody who's kind of like a super high achiever or like doing quite well, but or even, just struggling in school in general. What is some advice that you could impart on them, I guess?
Um,
And I'm so
advice,
sorry, that was a bit of
advice.
a garbled question. I can ask it again if that helps.
No, no, it's all right. I think trying a bunch of different things is really important. And then trying a bunch of different things and then just getting good at the things you like. Um, so for me, it's a little. I'll just start yapping. Let me just. So I know other facilitators like Ellie and Ollie were able to get to video game design and get good at that. And I'm here working on Uncommon. And so there's so many kind of careers and stuff nowadays that if you really like something, I think you can try to work towards it and find people that can make it work. And then just stick to it, see if you can make a career out of it. That's kind of where I was at too, and just, oh yeah, I kind of like this, and um, just keep trying to see if I can get better at it and improve. But I think being young, that's just one of the things you have time to experiment on. It's just what am I good at and what do I like. So just don't be afraid to try a bunch of different things and try to get good at things, even if it doesn't necessarily seem like it's a possible career path. Who knows? Maybe you'll get really good or you'll really enjoy it and you'll get lucky and find something. So yeah, don't be afraid to just try things and experiment and get good at whatever you want to do.
I think to add on to that, and I definitely agree with that. I think it's also it's uh asking for help is totally okay. I have only just started being okay with asking for help, but I think that it's such a useful thing to know when you might need help, when you might be behind on some schoolwork and you need someone to just kind of like break it down for you or be like untangle the kind of I have a lot of like webs in my brain where it's like everything gets stuck onto each other and it feels like I have to do everything at once. So asking for help with like little things or like even bigger things is totally okay. And yeah, anybody, most people are willing to help. That's what I was trying to say there.
Yeah,
A lot of the people that I've spoken to help like get me to where I am today, have helped me, and I'm very grateful for that. And like asking for help is good. That's what I was trying
yeah.
to say. I'm so sorry, I was rambling there. But yes,
No, I think that's super important. I think especially with the whole being high achieving thing in grade school, I think it becomes really hard to ask for help because you're so used to just, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do that. But no, I agree. Yeah, ask for help. And on the same topic of like experiment and do what you're good at. Ask people who are better than you at the thing you're doing because they will know so many things. And it's okay to just ask for help. And it's hard. I know it's hard. Like I struggle with it a lot too. Um, but yeah, getting better at it. We're all learning.
yeah, anybody can be a mentor to you if that makes any sense. Like I have a couple of friends who are kind of mentors to me because they've like shown me how to do something, or I can ask them for help in how to do something. I think it's very important to just be able to kind of learn from each other. Like I said at the beginning of this talk, we're full circle, everyone. So yeah, and with that, I will thank you, Brian, for all of your knowledge that you shared with us today and your story. It was really nice to get to know you a bit more, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching have also really enjoyed their time. Just one bit from me, I guess. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you to anybody in the future who is also watching. I hope it's less hot there. And just for anybody who is interested in our next talk, more information to come, but our next talk is in July, and that will be in our newsletters, on our social media as well. But yes, thank you everyone. And I will now go and have some beans on toast, I think.